Welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Plek, and joining me in studio is none other than Mr. Jordan Smith. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. It's good to be here.
I am so pumped that you were here because we're talking about a subject that's near and dear to the hearts of all human beings. We're going to be talking about sexual predators. I wasn't expecting this conversation to be here, but here we are. And also joining us from the Cody Sparks Band, Mr. Cody Sparks.
Hello.
All right, so here's the question. We're going to jump right into this because I don't like to kind of beat around the bush, all right? We don't need any small talk. We're going to get right to this question. And here it is. It says, how should the church handle sexual assault and sexual predators within the congregation? When should the police be involved? How do we ensure we are protecting women and children while culprits? And then it ends with a question mark there, which I'm assuming they meant, how do we ensure we are protecting women and children while church is going on? All right, so let's break this down. And I want to hear first your thoughts, Jordan.
Well, I'd be curious, like, how do you define sexual assault? Like, is that a guy touching a girl's butt, or what's going on here?
Yeah, what do you when you hear the word sexual assault, what do you think, Cody?
That's a tough one. Probably something really bad, like a rape or,
Okay.
one of those issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say, too.
Yeah, thinking of sexual assault doesn't make me think of what the definition of sexual assault actually is, which is interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so here is... how should the church handle sexual assault? First off, we need to know what sexual assault is. I brought up the Texas Penal Code because I don't know because I think, is it grabbing someone's butt or is it rape? Where is in between those two things? And it says a sexual assault occurs. A person commits that offense if the person intentionally or knowingly causes the penetration of the anus or sexual organ of another person by any means without that person's consent. B, causes the penetration of the mouth of another person by the sexual organ of the actor without that person's consent, or causes the sexual organ of another person without that person's consent to contact or penetrate the mouth, anus, or sexual organ of another person, including the actor, or regardless of whether the person knows the age of the child at the time of the offense, the person intentionally or knowingly causes the penetration of the anus or sexual organ of a child by any means, and all that then of a child, if you know they're a child at the time or not. So essentially penetration with a sexual organ is sexual assault. So how should the church handle sexual assault? We would say we need the police involved.
Right, totally.
Because now this is where I'm not sure if I've ever shared. I think this came up on the last podcast that we did last week with Holland Gregg, where we talked about God's relationship to the government, God's relationship to the church, God's relationship to the family. And God has a unique relationship with each one of those entities, but those entities all cross over each other in one form or fashion. Obviously, the church should be speaking truth into the government, which is enforcing laws, and the laws that are created are to help the family flourish. And then the church also speaks into the family as well. So here, I think, how should the church handle sexual assault? Tell the police. If you see anything like this happen, then you need,
Yeah, that's pretty bad, though. I mean, that is pretty bad.
Well, yeah, but...
So sexual assault isn't...
Well, that's what the question asks.
Yeah.
How should the church handle sexual assault?
It's horrible.
And then sexual predators, well, you send them to jail, right? I mean, if someone's committed a sexual assault...
see ya.
Well, I mean, again, they have to have due trial and all the
Yeah, that's
things.
fine. You get your justice.
But let's go to this question. I think this one comes up, and I shouldn't be irritated by this because I think nobody knows this, but maybe because I hear it so much, I get irritated by it. So please forgive me. And it's this. Whenever I go to whenever Adrian and I go to counseling or we go to the doctor, the person, I feel like they say this to make themselves feel more important. And I know that's probably not true. But they say, listen, there are certain things that I have to report as a mandatory reporter. And I want to go, so everybody's a mandatory reporter. I don't even have a special credential, and I'm a mandatory reporter. If you see a sexual assault and you don't say something, or you know of it happening and you don't do anything, then you are failing to be the mandatory reporter that all the state of Texas is. So
Like,
Yeah,
what's
but
the
if-
statute of limitations on that, right? Like, what if you hear about something that happened a year or 2 years ago? Are you still supposed
but I
to
think
report
it's
that?
if you see it, you're a man. If someone tells you, like, for example, someone says like, I'm going to harm myself, you're a mandatory reporter. And
Right.
if someone says like
I'm
someone
going to shoot
is-
up the blah blah blah. You're mandatory report.
right
on that.
somebody is beating me and sexually attacking me, then you're like, oh well, crud, I need to go and report that. That is like this isn't just for counselors. This is for all people in the state of Texas. That if someone says I'm going to self-harm or I'm being currently harmed, then you need to you're a mandatory reporter.
Well,
So
my
it's like
gosh, I'd hope
active.
you would do that.
Yeah,
if,
right.
if this is the definition of that and you saw that, my goodness, I would hope that you
So,
would
yeah,
report
like,
that.
You would be a
It's
sad
pretty
person if you didn't
bad.
report like harm like that.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I always like get a little frustrated when I probably shouldn't. I'm not gonna get frustrated. I'm gonna make sure that.
What do you get frustrated about?
that
if someone
people,
doesn't?
like, that, like the person goes, well, I'm a mandatory reporter, so I have to. Report.
Yeah,
Are they
it
not
gets
like
a- it-
required to say that?
So are we. That's my point.
No, I'm
Everybody's
saying
required.
Required as like a doctor to officially say that because of their
But
profession.
you're required as a Texan. That's how awesome we are.
Right, I don't walk around, hey, I'm a mandatory reporter. What I'm saying is within their profession, maybe they legally have to say
Okay,
that.
maybe that's it.
out
Maybe I shouldn't be
loud.
irritated
I
because
don't
of that.
know. Just
yeah,
a
you're right.
thought.
You're right. Because I'm like, where did that come? Like, why do you have to tell me? Well, as a mandatory reporter, maybe that's part of their training is that you have to say that.
Right.
Even
well,
though.
also, so you're aware.
Yeah.
So if there's something that you really don't want to say, don't say it. Because
Right. Okay. All right. Maybe I should get off my high horse. on
they're
that.
like, hey, fair warning here.
Fair
I
warning.
have to report
But
things
like
that.
everybody in the state of Texas is a mandatory. It's like applies. In fact, here's what it says: report that any person suspecting child abuse or neglect must immediately make a report. It applies to all individuals, not just teachers or healthcare professionals. Also covered suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation of elderly persons, persons with disabilities, or those receiving services from a certain home and community-based providers. So that's the state of Texas.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well, this definitely puts out, hey, mind your own business.
yeah,
That doesn't exist in certain things, I guess.
Yeah, it is against the law not to.
But then you also, but that's another thing. Like, hey, you saw someone beating the heck out of their wife, and you report it, and then they could come, and then she could say, "No, I'm not pressing charges," and no, and then it's dropped.
Right.
know?
Now you're a
So-
dirtbag.
yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's where it gets challenging. I don't know what you do about that, but that's what the law says.
That's interesting. But
So-
but again,
here's
yeah,
another thing. Here's what's weird. I don't know if you know this. People have had the cops called on them for sending their 9-year-old to the park to play.
there's dumb. Okay, and this is where your frustration turns to me, where I get frustrated, where it's the dumbest things nowadays. That hey, I left my dog. I don't have a dog, so this isn't about me. I left my dog in the car running full
AC on.
AC with the windows down to run into the store to grab milk and run out. The cops have been called. Animal control's been called, and you're like, what in the world?
Yeah.
In what world?
So I guess, and I think this is why you have laws for the people who don't have social awareness. And so you go the better
Yeah.
safe than sorry.
Sure.
I mean,
I agree.
If I saw that, I'd be like, oh, no worries.
Right.
But if I saw the car off, I went over and looked at it, looked
Well, that's your-
inside,
that's-
and I go,
that's
oh,
a duty.
crud, somebody
Yeah,
needs to do
100%.
something. So I guess you just have those people who just are
They're
not
the Karens of the world.
Yeah,
that-
well, they just aren't socially aware people,
No.
and God, they're sweet people, I'm sure, and so, but they don't know how to be socially aware. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, totally. But I think to get back to the question at hand, how does the church handle sexual
right.
assault? I would just say the church doesn't, right? They give it to the authorities
Yeah, we
at that point.
as mandatory reporters,
Yes.
Gosh.
since we're mandatory reporters.
But
we have
again,
to-
that's like we were talking about, like a slap on the butt. Would you say that was sexual assault? Wow,
Well,
I
not
don't know.
by the
Depends on
Texas
the
Penal
intent,
Law.
and that's what I was about to say.
like
So that's not something that you would report.
Yeah.
Because that's something you should handle with that person who did that. If you saw that happen,
Yep.
you knowing that person could be like, hey, are you okay? Was that real? Like, you good?
right.
But I guess it depends on the scenario in the situation and knowing what's going on.
So
Because
something like that should be handled by the church, you would say, right?
What's that?
Like a slap on the butt or something, not literally a sexual assault as defined by the penal code.
Oh, yeah. That's where the church would come in. However, let's say a person feels like that was sexual assault, and they're going to run into the problem of they weren't penetrated or whatever. But if they take it to the police, then it becomes a police issue, and then the church is moved out until it's decided it's not a church issue, or not a police or government issue.
I mean, that could still be considered assault, though, right?
I get, yeah, that could be. So that's assault.
It would be like physical assault,
All right, so
maybe.
assault is
Right.
intentionally knowing or recklessly causing bodily injury to another, intentionally or knowingly threatening another with imminent bodily injury, including the person's spouse, or intentionally or knowingly causing physical contact with another when the person knows or should reasonably believe that the other regards the contact as offensive or provocative. So there, it's not sexual assault,
Just
but that could be
assault.
just straight assault. So
Yeah, you're not going to be a
so
a
that would be
petty on that
assault,
one.
and so that's where
Or sexual offender.
Yeah, if that wouldn't be sexual assault, that would just be assault, because that's intentionally but it's intentionally or knowingly cause physical contact with another when the person knows or should reasonably believe that the other regard that contact as offensive or provocative. So that's where someone grabs the butt, and then the person then determines that it would be on them. Like, let's say someone reports that, then that person needs to say, hey, that person assaulted me. If it's assault, then and
Well, how do you argue like, I didn't know that you wouldn't like that, and I thought we had a thing going on, so I knowingly didn't do that as assault. I just did it to flirt with you.
If you really feel like it's assault,
Right.
then you need to go to the police, because then that solves that. If you think it's just like a misunderstanding, then the church. This is where it goes from crime to not a crime.
Right.
It's a crime if the person says this person intentionally or knowingly caused physical contact with me when they should know or reasonably know that I would see that as offensive or provocative. And I think that's now the jury at that point would have to say, did you know that this would be offensive or provocative? And then the person would have to reasonably
Man, because you could go, I walked by and like just accidentally like hit the butt. I didn't slap it. I just walked by and actually, without a witness, that's a he said, she said,
Right.
he, whatever, one against the other, word on word of this is what happened. How do you even?
Right. So, but let's just say you have a witness.
Yeah. Well, then you're up creek.
Then you have a witness. Then that person, and it's assault. And let's say they go, hey, did you do that? And they go, yeah, I did that. And you like it. Well, then now we've got a crime. If they go, oh, crud, I didn't even know I hit you, or I'm sorry, then you don't have a crime and you don't have assault. The question is,
Is that how the person reacts? Like the offender?
Look, I'm just reading what the law says.
For
This is
sure.
where, like, it intentionally or knowingly causes physical contact with another when the person knows or should reasonably believe that the other regards the contact as offensive or provocative. So it's assault if you don't want to be touched and you've made that clear and the person touches you.
Okay, question. So we're dudes and like we're playing a sport.
Yeah.
I don't want my butt touched or slapped.
Right.
But we all know in sports, dudes slap each other on the butts. Hey,
They
great
say,
job.
"Good game."
Hey, good game. Pop.
Bam.
Well, if I did not want to be touched like that, couldn't I say, hey, I'm going to call the police because that's assault, brother?
Yeah.
I mean, technically, but then you would argue.
So then in the trial, it would go, let's talk
correct.
about your personality. Let's talk about your character.
Right.
Have you been known to butt slap? Have
you been known to-
Are you the butt slapper?
on the team.
I mean, yeah. And then have people told you before that they didn't like that?
I'm just thinking outside the box here that the way that you read that and like things that happen, that technically could be something that somebody could.
Yeah. But that's the
It's
thing.
so weird.
So when it goes to, I think this is the part where when the person takes it to the government for trial,
Right.
it's taken out
of the church.
church's hands.
That's right.
Until that point, though, until it's like said, this is assault, it's in the church's hands.
Right.
So to the question, though, is asking about sexual assault, but we can go down this road. I think it's how should the church handle sexual assault and sexual predators within the congregation? Well, so to sexual assault, like you report that's bad, and it's really specific what that sexual assault is. Sexual predators, we actually have a policy at our church about this.
How do you define sexual predator? Is that like someone who's
Somebody that was
actively-
guilty of assault, I
so
think.
it's past tense, because predator
Right.
to me sounds more like they're actively preying.
They already predated.
Okay, so here's what a
Predator?
what is a sexual predator? It's someone who associates with children. A sexual predator
Okay.
with a particular interest in children may show a preference for associating with grade school, middle school, or high school age children. They may have few friendships of their own age or have unusually close friendships with children. They create dependency. The sexual predator may begin manipulating their chosen victim to create dependency and intimacy. In the beginning, they may be very attentive, showering the individual with gifts, praise, phone calls, and texts. This creates a feeling the victim that the perpetrator has a special bond with them. Okay, the next thing.
So it's more like grooming and everything associated
Yeah.
with that, not just the actions themselves.
Well, hold on. Using manipulative language, you may notice a potential sexual predator using manipulative language. They may insult or mock the victim on their behavior, appearance, clothes, friends, or other parts of their personal life. When challenged with this behavior, they may lie and twist the information, making the victim feel as though they were at fault, so gaslighting. They may repeatedly focus on their own feelings in order to make the victim feel guilty for hurting them. Or pushing physical and sexual boundaries. Sexual predators may push past healthy boundaries. Their behavior may begin with something innocent, touches on the back, hand, or leg, but it may escalate to inappropriate touching on the thigh, near the genital, on the breast, or even fondling the person without consent. If the predator is already in a relationship with the victim, they may cross pre-established boundaries or fail to ask for consent. They may use manipulation to push the person to carry out tasks they are not comfortable with. And then the last one, expressing jealousy and controlling behavior. So all of these that I'm dealing with here are usually dealing with children who don't have the ability to say, hey, that I didn't like that.
Right.
But I do think, adult to adult, there might be a time when a dude does something and the woman feels some sort of way about it. But it's on her, like, because if the guy is being a sexual predator, that's a problem. It's a real issue, and you wouldn't want that at your church at all, and you wouldn't want that person in leadership. You wouldn't want that, especially around children. I mean, like, that's where you're like, no.
If someone comes in and they are registered, they have to tell you, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, a person that's a registered sex offender, that legally they're supposed to tell you
Right.
whenever they come to church or whatever. Now they don't.
I think the character of somebody coming in here saying just from the get-go, hey, this is this is who I am, like, this happened.
Yep.
That's more impressive than somebody that was registered that would come in and completely ignore it and not say anything at all because no one would know.
Right. Well, there's 3 types of sex offenders: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Right.
Each one gets tier 3 is the worst, tier 1's the least worst. And if it's tier 1, you're only on the registered sex offender list for a certain period of time. And we have it as all RSOs, registered sex offenders, must report in and then be escorted by a pastor, staff, deacon, somebody, and not be around children because we want to obviously protect children because they don't have a voice. So yeah, I think that's a big deal.
Does each person that comes in and says, like, I'm registered, do you talk to that person and hear each case, like each story of what happened from each person?
It's online, so whenever they tell you, you go,
You
okay,
just look it up.
online. And it has all the details.
Sure, but I mean, would you, if somebody came and told you, hey, would you want to have a full on kind of like an interview process of a conversation, just to fill that person out?
Yeah, we actually have that exact thing on our registered sex offender policy. I know that everybody wants to read it. In fact, we have an entire questions that we're required to ask. And this is where we would say, as a pastor here at Wells Branch Community Church, I'm required to ask you these questions. Are you willing to discuss what resulted in you being under RSO status? If yes, express appreciation for the willingness to talk about the difficult subject. If no, affirm their willingness to know their limits, but make clear that we ask they may not attend Wells Branch Community Church events or services until they affirm and submit to this policy. which includes this interview. So that like we've really done a lot of work here in that. So if someone is a registered sex offender,
because that would be such a bummer if somebody was like somewhat innocent and was maybe like peeing by a park or made a bad decision, doing something dumb.
Yeah, and I think if someone
there's
like
that's why the tears are. The tears are so
like,
important.
Okay, you can, listen, I'm not going to take any chances. Yeah, I'm sure you peed on the playground or whatever during non-school hours, and you had to take a leak. I understand. What we're going to do is whenever the 6 months or whatever, we'll remove you from the list, and then you'll go back onto full ability to serve in whatever capacity because you're now no longer a threat.
Yeah, but those tears matter.
They do. Oh, they're huge.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's why it's that makes sense to me, and I'm so thankful that there's tears.
Yeah. The tier 3. Once you're tier 3, you're on the list for life, and there's no.
You're just on. Yeah.
You're on there. And
is there something that prompted Wells Branch making this policy?
Yeah, we had a guy going here that we didn't know, and then we got we got a secret letter, and the person wouldn't tell us who it was, and they sent it it was one of those things where they left the letter on my desk, they folded up the RSO's status, and then highlighted the name and said, this person's at our church, and I can't come to this church because this person's here, and I'm like, oh my gosh. The person, of course, I didn't know how they knew or whatever, but then we pulled it out and we're like, oh gosh, we need to go talk to this guy. And then he was very understanding. He was really gracious with it. He actually built the floor in your office.
Well, so wait,
is he still around?
No,
because horrible job.
Yeah, he's been gone for 5 years.
You said it was required that they tell you,
and he didn't.
So where's your is that mandatory report status there or what? Because that's a crime, right?
Yeah, you can't do that. So we said, hey, listen, you can't.
But you didn't call their parole officer.
We didn't know anything back
like
then.
That?
That's when we were just figuring it out.
Okay.
So at that point, that's where he said, hey, we need to make a policy about this stuff. And so we did. That's what we made. It's on our website now, but it was published in January 13th of 2020.
It's so crazy how in the church world that there's things that you would never think about would be an issue.
Yeah.
And then they become an issue and there is no policy or plan. And you're like, what is our plan or policy on this? So you actually have to sit and figure it out and talk it through.
Yeah.
And
that was a
that's tough.
That was a long
that's really tough.
Because we were like, we don't want to just. How are else these people going to get saved?
That's where it's hard for the church. If it was just a public entity, hey, see ya.
Yeah.
Get out of here. This is ridiculous. Right. But being the church and being here for the broken.
That's where you and I think that's why we have policies in place. And the question, how do you protect women and children? We protect women and children by making sure that, in our children's ministry, you don't have anyone alone with a child.
Yeah.
So let's say someone drops their kid off early and there's only one person there. We'd say, hey, you can't drop off yet unless you're willing to stay here. Then obviously it's not dropping them off until another children's ministry worker comes or something, because we can't have your child alone in a classroom with just one adult.
And it's our policy that everyone involved with children get a background check, correct?
Yeah, right. You got to have a background check, and you can't be on tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. No tiers. No tier background check. And honestly, I think we have it. If you're a convicted felon, you don't get to work in the children's ministry right away. And there's, for a certain period of time. We had Eddie Franz. Do you remember him? He used to work in our children's ministry, and
Eddie Franz.
Yeah, he wasn't he wasn't doing the classroom. He just did the front desk.
Yeah,
and that was great.
Well, what you say or not for a certain amount of time, what does that mean? Eventually the church gets comfortable with the person?
Until you know the guy. Let's say it's a felony. I think his was a drug felony. So we were like, oh, he's clearly beyond this. And so, no, he never did, but I would be okay with that. From someone having something 15, it'd be 20 years ago now or something?
Yeah.
You're okay, I think some time has passed. I think we can kind of move on. And you've seen their character.
That's what I was saying. Talking to somebody and being around them and being with them, you get to know someone's true character.
Right.
But really, character is who you are when no one is looking. So,
Well, yeah. But I mean, like, if that's in their
correct.
past.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, if that's way in their past,
Right.
I mean, like, man, how long are we going to hold it over somebody for,
That's correct.
Getting caught for smoking weed or whatever, or doing whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think, I don't know if we've ever had anybody, like want to do children's ministry, and then we're like, no, it's because you came back as a whatever. And Eddie would told us, like, hey, I can't serve in children's ministry. You don't, like, I don't want to even be back there. I don't even want to cause any issue, but all I can do to check in, no problem. So he was really great.
Just
about
aware.
that. He's awesome. So our RSO policy is on our website. That which that's how that's the way we protect the church.
And again, though, having security in the front.
Yep.
Background checking all of the volunteers.
And we have a patrol right now that sort of roves the area.
Yep.
Yeah.
Knowing that. Yeah.
But I guess what I don't want to create is like this fear that at any moment your kid's gonna be like messed with, right?
Dude, and that's unfortunate. In the world we live in, it could be anywhere. And that's so sad. But you want everyone to feel so comfortable.
I know, and I think the problem is, like, sexual assaults are less now than they were 30 years ago. But they're way more publicized now because people,
well, you can look people up exactly where they are on your phone and computer,
and
you
hear
can
about stuff all over the place. And out of the millions and millions of people, there's bound to be something that goes wrong and off. So I'm not excusing it. I just don't want us to sort of walk around in fear everywhere we go, because I think teaching your kids stranger danger all the time is not good either.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
So you said, or this one dude who didn't announce that he was a sex offender, is that the only time we've had someone at the church?
No, someone did tell me that he was a sex offender. And he's like, I'm not going to ever be around the children. I'm just going to come to service. I'm just going to leave. And we didn't know about that early on. Like, that was back in like 2013. And then he disappeared over a period of time. And then when we moved here to this building, he was working at Papa John's, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
So second question now. If another one of these registered sex offenders comes to the church, like, is this something we need to tell the congregation, like the parents especially, like, hey, this guy was involved in XYZ? Like, I assume most parents would want to know that, right?
An RSO would be escorted all over the place.
Right.
So he wouldn't, like, even to the bathroom. That's where it's, I think
So
that's
you're
what it
saying
says.
that we wouldn't let people know, correct?
No. But because the only way to let people know was either send out a mass email or stand the guy in the front of the church and be like,
law of
hey,
shame.
Yeah, we're going to do the walk of shame. But if an elder or a deacon or a staff member is following that guy around the entire service,
right,
you might be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it sounds like the church has a lot in place to safeguard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we could ever be perfect about it. You're trying to manage protection with grace, and we have like rules for even because some RSOs have their own children. Well, what do you do with that? Well, we address that in our.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, what if they have kids?
Yeah,
and so they can drop them off, but then they can't go back. They have to drop them off with the front desk person. The front desk person walks them back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's great.
So, and we want them to be involved in ministry, but they'd have to be involved in the ministry where it would be not around kids. So you'd have to talk to the community group pastor, which in this case is me, and I would say, oh, well, if you're a man, then you can go to the men's group on Tuesday morning because you're not going to be around any kids. That works like a perfect spot. Yay.
Somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the part where...
Well, we do have a guy who brings his kids to men's group. That's why I say that.
Oh, really? How old?
Fun fact.
I mean, I don't know their age. 6, young.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'd say, like, hey, this is a men's group, and you'd probably be like...
Probably more your group, right? That one
my
doesn't
group
have
wouldn't
kids.
work because that's at my house.
Yeah, it's at his house, so he has kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't work.
Well.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be like, I'd be like, hey, if that ever happened, it would be at the church. And I'm like, hey, this is the one for kids.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. So did we answer all the questions on that? I think that it's a pretty fascinating sort of topic. How should the church handle sexual assault? Talked about that. and the sexual predators within the congregation, like, yeah, and they probably, I mean, nobody knows that they're not called sexual predators; they're called registered sex offenders. But I guess the question would be, what if it's a sexual predator within the church? What do you do if you see somebody grooming somebody? Man,
I think you need to go to leadership,
or you go Matthew 18. You go, hey man, that's weird.
or call them out.
Yeah, I think what you do is Matthew 18. You first go to that person. How do you handle a sexual predator? So a sexual predator is someone who's trying to make a move on a kid, and you go, all right.
I mean, I disagree with this. First off, like just going to that guy by himself, he can be like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then keep doing it, and you might
Right.
not
Well, if he
see
does
it.
I mean, but
that sounds very dangerous. Put it that way.
What do you mean?
Matthew 18 is you're supposed to approach this person one-on-one.
Right.
Like, hey, I saw you grooming this kid. You better stop. And he's like, okay, sorry, and then does it somewhere where you can't see it. That sounds very dangerous, right?
No, but I think okay. But what else do you do? You don't just. What are you gonna do? Like get everybody there for like a. Aha! I caught you. I don't know. What do you do?
Report to police?
A sting operation?
I don't know.
A grooming activity would be like him coming up and saying like. That's where I go back to what those.
Yeah, what is grooming?
Well, yeah, if you intentionally
what does that mean?
This guy
Like,
is
define
interested
that.
in children and is grooming them,
but
like that's.
But you wouldn't, if you knew that, then you call the police. But I think the hard thing is like someone who you don't know, because if the guy hasn't been convicted yet, he's still potentially could be doing something. What do you do?
Well, I mean, you said that the dude was grooming, so I guess what does that mean?
No, but
in the
like a
context
grooming.
of
So
what
yeah,
you're
a sexual
saying?
predator with particular interest in children may show a preference for associated with grade school, middle school, or high school age children. So you go like, let's say it's a 50-year-old man and he's hanging out with a teenager. You go, hey, a teenage. Let's just say it's a 50-year-old man, not involved in the student ministry, no authority of the church, but he's always going up to the 15-year-old kids and going like, hey guys, what's going on? Want to hang out later? That's where you'd be like, hey.
I mean, I'd still let leadership know if it were me personally, at the very
At least so people are aware. That's where it's tough. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit weird. Like, what if there's a guy that was in your church since like you were a kid?
Yep.
And he was there, and you've known him your whole life.
Yep.
He just never got married, never did this,
Yep.
and now he's older. And then he's just been around. You have a kid now. Your kid comes around. He talks to your kid or hangs out or is just around. Where does it get to? Where
Yeah, 'cause
isn't
I
it?
just
It's
don't-
like that's weird.
Right, but
you
I-
should.
but I
do you
don't-
have that feeling?
Yeah, I guess the problem is like, let's say somebody's been here for 30 years. To your knowledge, they've never done anything weird.
Right.
They're talking to somebody in the middle of church. You just leave that alone. But then if they start like cornering a kid or like,
Sure.
becoming a close talker. Or
Yeah,
something,
I think you would be aware.
I
You
think
would
it'd be
know.
obvious.
That's what I mean. I think you would.
Right?
It would be pretty obvious.
Yeah,
you would
that's
think.
what I'm saying. If it's obvious like that, then I'm definitely going to leadership.
But-
I'm
but
not
no,
approaching
but
the
I
guy
guess I'm saying, like,
one-on-one.
But if you
I'm gonna go on
go to
this.
that guy, right? Like, hey, dude, what's up? Oh, I didn't even notice I was doing that.
But then
Oh,
does he know
really?
he's like busted and
Or
stops?
because he could be able to explain, like, hey, I was just telling that kid, like, if you ever touches my car again,
Yeah, I'm gonna be your.
I'm gonna make sure I tell your parents. Oh, my bad. But you have no idea what he was saying or doing. That's why I'm just.
But then does that make your relationship with that person weird? If they were being like, then you have to go back again and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
Yeah, I'd be like,
And then
my
you're
bad.
backtracking?
I just know little Bobby over there, and he's, he's more susceptible. I don't know.
Yeah, I would always. For me, I don't mind approaching, but I would also let
I think
someone
the only
else
way you
know.
could- is if they are pushing sexual boundaries. I think the
Yeah.
talking in church. I think that's the only thing. But pushing sexual boundaries, like you see them putting their hand on their leg, or put their hand on their back. Or
Well, it's gonna get again. If I saw someone like put their hand on a child's private part,
Right.
I'm probably
that
not
part-
saying anything. I'm
Yeah.
probably just swinging.
Right,
Then I'm
right,
gonna
right.
get under assault, but that's fine. It's for a kid.
But,
Yeah.
but I'm with you. I don't think. I think it's just like he puts his hand on the shoulder, and it's a little bit too weird.
So I remember in high school, there was this guy. Gosh, I'm trying to make sure I say this right so it doesn't get out to. Anyways, there was this girl, and she had a stepdad, and I always got this weird vibe about
Something was going on.
it. I just thought it was weird, and like she'd be sitting there and he'd like come behind her and like rub her shoulders, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Anyways, way later, he actually tried bust and move on this person, and for me, I was like, called it. I knew it. What a weirdo freak! Like, knew it. And the other people were like, I can't believe this. This is I never in a million years. And I'm just like, how did you not like? You didn't think any of that was weird? Well, that's his daughter. I was like, well, technically stepdaughter, but I mean, it's just like, just sometimes you just know, and sometimes being at church, you put blinders on, and you're like, man, they're at church and we're here, so no, they're not doing that. We're just overlooking or overthinking it, and you have to be really careful in situations and scenarios because you don't really know. I don't know. That's hard.
It is hard.
Man.
Okay, well, yeah,
It's like, woo.
I think I would go first to the guy if it was an obvious like crotch grab or something. Then I would go to leadership and we kind of make a move and go.
Well,
to
you
police.
said the dude in your example corners a youth or whatever. Like,
mean,
are you approaching that person, or
yeah,
are you like?
I'd go one-on-one to that guy.
I would, and it's how you approach it too. It's like, you good?
About.
Right.
I want to go find out. Hey,
do you come into that situation lighthearted, be like, what are y'all talking about? What are we doing over here?
Yeah. And then if the kid looks like he's like, help, you go, Or if the kid's like, we're working on our,
This is my favorite part about your oldest son, because he's a lot like me and our facial expressions are just ridiculous. And Austin would be the one that's like look at you like big-eyed, like, get the heck away from me. Yeah. Oh, womp womp.
Womp womp. That's his new saying.
Oh, it's great.
Oh gosh. All right. Yeah. What else? What other questions you got?
I mean, I guess y'all as parents, like, are you teaching your kids anything about how to identify, avoid, be aware of this sort of thing?
Yeah, I think for us early on, we've kind of gone through like private parts are private. Only person that can touch you there is the
Family.
doctor and mom and dad. That's it.
I don't even think we've done doctor, because he's only about to be 4.
Yeah.
But we're like family, family. And then he's like, we have to be careful about who's family. So we're like mom and dad, Lollipop, Gracie,
right,
Winky, just
Winky.
Who is Winky?
my sister Whitney.
Oh gosh, that's hilarious.
So that's where it gets kind of weird.
Yeah.
And they're in the we've talked about this before. They're kids, and they're like, especially boys. They're like, check this thing out.
Yeah, they love playing with their penis. It's
It gets
so fun.
so weird.
Yeah,
it's
and
big.
You're like, hey, look, it's big now. And you're like, stop that. Stop. Don't do that. Stop. Get everyone out of the bath. Everybody out of the. Because we bathed all 4 of them together for the longest time until eventually I was like, stop touching each other. This is ridiculous. And they think it's so funny. They can't stop laughing
and it's hard because even like we're guys, and we're just that, and it's for us like, haha. Yeah. When we laugh at them, and it is kind of funny because we know it's innocent, and they laugh, and we're kind of being serious, like, okay, quit doing that. But they think it's so funny. Oh, it's tough. That's a tough one.
But whenever when they start going to school, I say, like, if anyone ever touches you, you just kick them as hard as you possibly can, and you run away and tell somebody. If we talked about like unwanted touching, unwanted conversation, unwanted anything. If it feels weird, run. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the harder things is like don't hit girls. That's like the big one.
We haven't made it that far yet.
Yeah, we don't hit girls. But now we're Austin's in 6th grade. And he has his first dance.
School dance.
Yeah, school dance is this Friday.
Fricka.
And so, this should be an exciting time for him. He's pretty pumped about it. And we went over like appropriate touching of like a girl, like when you dance with her. So this is the appropriate 6th grade stance.
Yeah, that's it. I always laugh because I was like it was junior high, like 6th grade, and then 7th grade, 8th grade, and then slowly it just came in, like, and you're junior and senior, and you're just like, all right, who cares?
And then we said, you're going to see some girls might like stick their booty out and like, kind of twerk and stuff.
Absolutely do not go.
And I said, do not don't just get away from them. That's a high possibility that happen. What you want to do is get a circle of your friends, the dudes, and you guys are gonna have like some guy that's gonna be doing dance moves where he hits the ground, pops up, hits the ground, pops up like 50 times. Everyone's gonna laugh. He'll love it. Jump in there. It's fun. And then you're gonna stare at the wall, and there might be 2 slow songs. And when that happens, you stick your arms out. She puts her arms on your shoulder. You put your arms on her hips or on the side, and then you're good.
Oh, would like to be a fly on the wall for that. Oh,
It just would be so funny.
dang.
Do you think Jet will actually do that?
Oh yeah,
Jet?
Jet will.
Or I mean Austin.
Austin.
sorry.
Oh, I was like, Jet's going to be the one in there that says, no, Dad, I'm going to.
I'm gonna take this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Jet's gonna go rock the dance moves.
He would be the one that's out there he would be the guy you were talking about first. It's on the floor.
Absolutely
up and,
crazy. Yeah. Austin would be a wallflower, and
That's why it makes me laugh with Austin's personality sometimes because it's so much like mine. Dang firstborn PKs.
Yeah, he's just like,
And you just sit back and just watch.
yeah, he's gonna sit there and watch, and then he'll probably have a girl ask him to dance, and he'll be like, okay, and then he'll,
I
stand.
talked about this the other day. I went to Christian school all the way up until 6th grade, and then I went to public. And my first dance was in 6th grade. And my mom was like, absolutely not. Like, no, you're not going. And all of a sudden, I had friends come over and beg, and she finally let me go. And it was at the Methodist church basement. I'm like, now I talk about it, I'm like, Mom, how ridiculous is this? We went in there, and I was going, I am so scared right now. Like, how does this even work? I don't even know how to dance. What are we doing? I never asked a girl to dance one time, and this one girl came up to me and asked me like 3 different times, and oh gosh, I was so nervous and did the.
That's how you do it right there.
That's fun.
That is fun.
Well, yeah. Anywho,
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for watching. We talk faith, culture, everything in between. If you want to ask any questions, you can text us at 737-231-0605 or go to pastorplek.com. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks for watching. Have an awesome week of worship.